Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into the fascinating and, let's be honest, slightly intimidating mechanics behind exactly how your dog evaluates strangers. We are moving way beyond those internet myths about psychic pets and uncovering the actual documented science of canine cognition. And trust me, what they're really doing in those quiet moments is absolutely incredible.
Okay, we've all been there, right? Someone steps into your home, and your dog does that quiet thing. They don't bark, they don't make a big scene, they just pause. They hang back, maybe sit a little closer to your leg, and just silently stare at the new guest. It's this piercing judgment that sparks that super popular internet myth, you know the one, that dogs can somehow read auras or that they have this magical sixth sense for spotting bad people. It feels so mysterious when it happens, doesn't it?
But the reality, it is actually far more impressive than auras or pure magic. What's really happening when your dog stares down a visitor is that they're running a hyper-fast, multi-channel sensory assessment right there in the background. It's not a sixth sense, it's rapid, hard data processing. Honestly, they're acting less like a psychic and way more like a biological supercomputer, just taking in gigabytes of environmental data all at once.
So, Section 1. How dogs read humans, the 3 channels.
Let's break down exactly what data your dog is gathering here. In those first 2 or 3 crucial seconds, literally before you even finish saying hello to your guest, your dog's brain instantly processes 3 distinct streams of info. First up, body movement. They're scanning for physical tension, how heavily a person's weight lands on the floor, and any sudden or unpredictable motions. Second, scent. They are quite literally reading the chemical weather of a stranger, detecting these tiny micro shifts in human body chemistry that get triggered by emotions like anger or fear. And crucially, number 3, social observation. They are intensely tracking how that stranger's presence alters your normal tone and body language. They take all 3 data points, mash them together, and form an instant behavioral baseline.
Moving right along to Section 2, devaluing human reliability, the Kyoto study.
To see how this immense amount of sensory data translates into an actual judgment, let's look at a 2015 study by Akiko Takaoka in Kyoto. They tested a really specific question. Do dogs just blindly follow a human's pointing gesture, or do they actively judge the person doing the pointing? They set up this clever 3-step scenario. Step 1, trust is built. The human points to a container with food, the dog follows, and the dog gets a treat. Easy enough, right? Step 2, the lie. The human intentionally points to an empty container, tricking the dog and breaking that trust. Then, step 3, the refusal. The human points to a food container again, but this time, the dog flat out ignores them.
34. Out of the 34 dogs tested in this exact scenario, every single one made the exact same choice. Not most of them, all of them. By round 3, they completely stopped following the gestures of the person who had lied to them. They didn't lose their appetite, and they definitely weren't confused. They just simply decided that this specific human could not be trusted anymore. They just wrote them off.
As lead researcher Akiko Takaoka noted, the dogs quite literally devalued the reliability of that human. And here is the genuinely fascinating part about this. When a completely new, different person stepped into the room and pointed during that 3rd round, the dogs followed the gesture immediately. They didn't lose faith in humanity as a whole. They essentially ran a behavioral credit score on the liar, downgraded their rating to 0, and moved right on to the next person with a completely fresh slate.
The absolutely crucial takeaway here is that dogs crave predictability above almost anything else. As University of Bristol researcher John Bradshaw notes, inconsistent behavior doesn't just confuse our dogs, it actively stresses them out. So your dog isn't making this grand philosophical moral judgment about someone being a quote-unquote bad person. They are simply protecting their own peace of mind. By avoiding unreliable elements, they're shielding themselves from the stress of chaos.
Which brings us to Section 3, judging kindness and intent, the Chihuahua study.
So what happens when the deception isn't about food, but about how someone treats you, the owner? Well, another incredible Kyoto study, led by Hitomi Chijiwa, set up a scenario where dogs watch their owners struggle to open a container and ask a stranger for help. Sometimes the stranger helped, sometimes they deliberately refused, turned away, and did absolutely nothing. The dogs engaged in what scientists call third-party affective evaluation. By simply observing an interaction between others, these dogs formed a really complex judgment. Later on, when offered treats by both a neutral bystander and the unhelpful stranger, the dogs overwhelmingly refused the treat from the person who snubbed their owner. No way were they taking that treat.
But here is the kicker. The strangers who actually helped the owner, they got 0 bonus points. The dogs treated the helpful person exactly the same as a neutral bystander. And why? Because dogs rely heavily on a negativity bias, meaning they weigh bad behavior far more heavily than good behavior. And honestly, that makes perfect evolutionary sense. Keeping a razor-sharp mental list of who is dangerous, unpredictable, or uncooperative, that's what keeps an animal alive in the wild. Knowing who to thank is just optional, but knowing who to avoid is literally a matter of survival.
Next up, Section 4, Tracking Human Intent, the Vienna Study.
Okay, so a massive team out of the University of Vienna explored something that sounds almost too human. Can a dog tell the difference between an honest mistake and an intentional lie? They tested an incredible sample size of 260 dogs using a really complex hidden treat setup. Basically, a treat was moved between 2 buckets while the dog watched. In one scenario, a human also watched the treat being moved, meaning they knew exactly where it was. In the other scenario, the human left the room, missed the switch, and was genuinely clueless about where the treat ended up. This study just brilliantly illustrates the depth of canine cognition. When the human who watched the switch pointed to the wrong bucket, so an intentional lie, the dogs completely ignored them. But when the human had missed the switch and pointed to the wrong bucket by an honest mistake, the dog showed way more patience and actually followed the gesture. They aren't just blindly tracking behavior, you guys. They are tracking intent. They fundamentally know when someone is actively trying to mislead them versus when someone is just, well, wrong.
And finally, Section 5, Why Breed and Context Matter. Now, it's super important to note that this cognitive ability isn't identical across all dogs. Researchers noticed truly fascinating differences based entirely on a dog's specific breed. Retrievers and collies, which are breeds specifically wired for cooperative work with humans, picked up the deception easily and ignored the intentional liar. Terriers, on the other hand, bred for independent solo work, actually followed the liar. But wait, it's not because terriers are gullible. It's centuries of selective breeding driving them to simply walk over and investigate the bucket themselves, completely disregarding the human social cues altogether. They basically say, yeah, I don't care what you're pointing at, buddy, I'm going to figure this out myself.
And of course, the science is always evolving. A very recent 2025 study by Hoy Lam Jim showed that when dogs observed humans acting selfishly toward other, completely unknown dogs, they showed no preference or judgment toward those humans later. It seems that if a situation gets a bit too abstract and doesn't directly involve the dog or their specific owner, the evaluation signal is just too weak to trigger a judgment. They are highly observant, for sure, but they aren't exactly the world's moral police.
So, if we synthesize all this evidence, we see that dogs really need clear, relevant triggers to judge someone. It usually requires direct deception, like being explicitly lied to, or it requires owner involvement, like someone refusing to help their human. Without those clear violations, dogs operate on a baseline of trust. If your dog loves everyone they meet, they aren't failing to detect bad people, they just haven't been given a clear, data-driven reason to flag someone yet.
But when they do flag someone, pay attention. Over 10,000 years of sleeping beside us, working with us, and watching us, dogs didn't just learn what we do. They began reading why we do it. Every time your dog pauses before greeting someone new, it isn't just simple instinct. It is the result of millennia of evolutionary history, building the precise mental tools required to sort through the utter complexity of human intent.
So I want to leave you with this provocative thought to drop in the comments below. When was the last time your dog silently judged a stranger? And what did they know that you didn't? Thanks so much for watching this explainer. Keep observing those incredible companions of yours, and I'll see you in the next one.